our next topic, which is the laws of Sefirat, HaOmer, the um, and we get to it, the laws of Yom Tov. Okay, I have about a little less than a half an hour because Mincha is here at 8:20. So let's start with talking about Sefirat HaOmer. Sefirat HaOmer is really a fascinating mitzvah. Sefirat HaOmer is actually a temple mitzvah. It is not a at-home mitzvah. It is not a shul mitzvah. However, that said, we don't live in the temple era anymore. And so this is one of those mitzvot that has been re-established, repurposed for our point. But it is still very valuable to go back and say, okay, what is Sefirat HaOmer from its original temple source? So uh, the might as well um, bring us back to it's actually in 2 weeks is the parsha. Um, um, there we go. Okay. So sentence 5 is the laws of Pesach. Sentence 6, the 15th day, that's your Chag HaMatzot. That's your Passover laws. Okay. Now, we've done Passover in the Torah. In this section of Vayikra, we've done Passover. After Passover, it says, Daber al b'nei Yisrael v'amarta alehem. You say to them, Ki tavo el haaretz, when you come to the land. So now I know that this is the context of this is going to be connected to the land, and it's going to be connected to the harvest. It's going to say Uktartem et katsira, and uh, you're going to harvest your wheat crop, you reap your harvest. Va'avetem et omer rishit katsirchem el hakohen, and you shall bring the first sheaf of your harvest to the kohen. So this omer that is done is you're actually really if we are counting from the Omer because on the second day of Pesach, the 16th of Nisan, they would go out to the fields, they would reap the barley, they would bring the barley back to the Beit HaMikdash, they would sift it, I think 13 times. They come up with a very, very fine meal offering, not like meals on wheels, but like grain. Um, it's a grain offering, it's a flour offering. It's made out of barley flour. This has a tremendous amount of significance. First of all, barley is considered the more primitive of the grains. It's more primitive than wheat. And this barley is offered in a semi-raw form, right? Because it's not going to be kneaded into dough, it's not going to be baked into a bread, it's just going to be offered as grain. And there is only one other offering that it ever comes with barley, and that is the offering of the sotah, the offering of an adulterous woman. The the Torah is going, the rabbis are going to say, look, this is meant to signify primitivity, animalistic, uncultured. So this has a, a sort of a meaning that it is sort of a starting point. It is the uncultured starting point. You were going to count, and then it's going to tell us, Ve'nifet Omer, Lifnei Hashem. You do this whole ceremony, and it goes through the various parts of the sacrifice, and there is a law. The law is manage my guests. Okay, so there is a set of laws. One of the laws is that you cannot eat of the new crop until the Omer has been brought. So the Pesach always comes in the spring, and in Israel, wheat grows it's a winter wheat that is harvested in the spring. And like many things, you are not allowed to benefit from it until you first give Hashem is due, until you first give thanks. And that's what this is. So you have this sacrifice which starts at this second day after Pesach. And by the way, it's an interesting point. You're supposed to go out at night to cut the Omer. which is why we count the Omer at night. Just a little known fact then. Now, once we've done the Omer, once we have allowed this new wheat crop to be fine, to be kosher, right? Because we brought our sacrifice. Then, sentence 15, it tells you, Usfartem lachem imacharata Shabbat, you shall count from the morrow of Shabbat. Morrow of Shabbat does not mean the 7-day Shabbat, it means Pesach. Pesach, the holiday of Pesach is referred to here as the Shabbat. Miyom aviachem et Omer HaTnufa, the day when you bring this Omer, Sheva Shabbatot Miotiena. It shall be 7 perfect weeks. Now, this perfect law is going to have downstream consequences for us, right? But you're supposed to count 7 perfect weeks, and then it connects us to the next thing. Ad mimacharata Shabbat Hashvi, till the 7th Shabbat, Tisperu Chamishim Yom, you shall count 50 days. Vikravtem mincha chadasha laHashem, and you shall count a new mincha to Hashem. That, by the way, is called the sacrifice of the 2 loaves, what's referred to as the shtei halechem, and that is wheat that is risen, that is a full loaf of bread, right? And so we see that the sort of the sophistication increases when we get to Shavuot, and Shavuot is going to be the opening of the new fruits season on the Jewish calendar. But the Sefirat HaOmer really connects the agricultural dimension of Passover to the agricultural dimension of Shavuot. And by extension, of course, it's going to connect Pesach itself to Shavuot, or maybe better said, Shavuot to Pesach, right? So that's what this mitzvah is. This mitzvah was meant to be in the temple. You can see it's clearly a connection between 2 different temple rituals, 2 different sacrifices that took place in the Beit HaMikdash. So what do we do now? We don't have a Beit HaMikdash. So because we don't have a Beit HaMikdash, we're going to do the at-home version. And here's how the at-home version works. The at-home version is that you are meant to, the at-home version and the at-shul version are really the same thing. Excuse me 1 second. Looks like no one's at the, maybe, hold on. Somebody was, in fact, at the door. Okay. So the at-home version is you are meant to actually stand when you do this. You count each day. And it's a very fascinating mitzvah because you only count the days, you only count with a blessing if you have been contiguous. Meaning, let's say on the 3rd night you overslept and you did not, you forgot entirely to count. So what are you meant to do? Well, you're meant to continue on in the count of the Omer. You forgot the 3rd night, but you're now at the 4th night. So you counted 1, you counted 2, you counted 4, 5, 6, all the way up to 49. But you see this word over here? Tmimot, right? You shall count off, it's the way they translate it is they must be complete. Sheva Shabbatot Tmimot Tiena. They shall be complete weeks. So if you miss a day, so then according to some opinions, you have not fulfilled the mitzvah. And so since you haven't fulfilled the mitzvah, you don't recite the bracha. This is the halacha. I will not say anything different. I will just point out one very sad psychological downstream consequence. And that is, if you know that you can't recite on the 4th night with a bracha after having finished the 3rd night, having forgotten the 3rd night, then you are sort of disincentivized, right? That it's I can give you a book, or I can.
All right.
This is usually a recipe for disaster. Hold on. I have this for that very reason, David. Oh, no. Oh, okay. Okay. So Um, okay, so now let me just clear my drawings here. So that's an unfortunate um, thing that happens. And I've seen it happen all too many times that people feel like they're out of the game. Why play? But the mitzvah, this is also important, just general rule. Generally speaking, we do not say that a bracha prevents a mitzvah. So let's say you didn't make a bracha on your tefillin. Have you fulfilled the mitzvah of tefillin? Yes. If you didn't make a bracha on your shofar, did you fulfill the mitzvah of shofar? Yes. If you didn't make a bracha on your Megillah, did you fulfill the mitzvah of Megillah? Yes. If you did not make a bracha on getting married, did you fulfill the mitzvah of marriage? Yes. So generally speaking, we don't say brachot are ma'akavot. They prevent us from succeeding. So this is the law of Sefirat HaOmer. Sefirat HaOmer has another overlay to it, and that is actually a double overlay. Let me just give you a couple other basic laws of Sefirat HaOmer. First of all, everyone's supposed to count for themselves. It's not enough to hear the rabbi count or the cantor count or your husband or your wife count. And the way you remember this is every Jew counts because every Jew counts. Only works in English, but you get the picture. You're meant to do it standing. You're meant to also do days and weeks. And so you'll see in the Siddur, it's very clearly lined out. You know, last night we counted 22, which is 3 weeks and 1 day in the counting of the Omer. Rabbi Soloveitchik has a very, very beautiful essay in Sacred and Profane, where he says that the reason for this is part of the idea of moving from slavery to freedom is, first of all, being able to appreciate the value of the sanctity of every moment. You could say that's the counting of the days. The weeks is a sense of future planning, to be able to see history as a dynamic force in which you are able to make things change. Okay, it's a beautiful piece. Just I'll recommend, the essay is called, excuse me, Sacred and Profane. If you want to go Google it now. The overlays to Sefirat HaOmer. The Talmud tells us, it's a very interesting story. It tells us that when Rabbi Akiva was young, he had many students. He had 24,000 students, and they died of a plague. Actually, 12,000 pairs, 24,000 students. They died of a plague between Pesach and Atzeret, between Pesach and Shavuot. And the interpretation is the following. There's a verse. Boker zira'et zarecha. In the morning you shall plant your field. Uva'erev al tanach yadecha. And in evening you cannot rest your hands. This is parallel to the story of Rabbi Akiva. He lost 24,000 students, and he went to, I think it says he went to the south, and he did a whole new set of students. Rabbi Akiva. So the simple interpretation is, the Talmud says, why did they die? They weren't kind to each other. They were disrespectful to each other. And in that disrespect, the punishment for disrespect was this plague. Many want to read this historically, because if you want to take mass extinction events in the life of Rabbi Akiva, you need to look no further than the Bar Kokhba rebellion, where many, many thousands of Jews died. And Rabbi Akiva was a devotee. He was an admirer of Bar Kokhba. But after that, what are you supposed to do after the Bar Kokhba rebellion? So he he continues to teach, and he teaches his students, one of which is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, famous hero of Lag BaOmer. The story, though, that is encapsulated in that is very easily the story of the Hadrianic persecutions. Maybe it's the story of the plague. Either way, we observe it as a time of mourning. Now, I have a little bit of a beard now. I should have more. 22 days should get me a little bit more than this. But it is amongst religious Zionists, shaving on Yom Ha'atzmaut is considered a acceptable practice as well. Rabbi Lichtenstein used to say the following. that getting ready for Shabbos is a din, it's a halacha, it's a requirement, it's an obligation, and Sefirat is only a custom. So a custom can't come along and make you look disgusting for Shabbos. So I also will usually I trim for Shabbos because like during the week you look even worse. Anyhow, it is a period of mourning, and we do things. We don't shave. We don't listen to live music. We generally don't conduct weddings. This is a bit of a complicated story because you need to find 33 days. There are different ways to account for those 33 days. And those are generally the observed practices of mourning during this time. Now, there is another good reason for this mourning, which is much later and is much more Ashkenazically central. The violence against the Jews in 1096 took place during this period of time. The Crusaders sort of launched their campaign, and they end up in Speyer, Mainz, and Worms right before Shavuot. So it's the end of the HaOmer, but nevertheless it's still in the HaOmer, and that was a very tragic event. And so it is a time period where we remember that. And so the mourning that we do, although it may have had origins with Rabbi Akiva, it certainly became amplified to a certain extent because of the Crusades and what happened there. One other thing was just worth sort of noting here is there's an old Jewish joke, right? That let's say it's Rosh Chodesh during the Omer, or you're Mevarchin Chodesh, you bless the new month during the Omer. Are you supposed to say the prayer called Av HaRachamim, which is a memorial for the Crusades? And so the old joke is, a guy comes to a shul and they ask him to lead Musaf. He says, "Do you say Av HaRachamim? Say Av HaRachamim here on Rosh Chodesh, on Erev Rosh Chodesh, that falls in the Omer, or do you not say it?" He says, "What's the minhag?" He says, "The minhag is to argue. The custom is for the rabbi and the gabbai to argue about what the right thing to do here is." So anyway, that's the joke. Again, I tell you, humor's worth what you pay. Okay, thank you for the laugh. Okay, so that's more or less Sefirat HaOmer. Let me just talk about the two different time periods. One time period is to observe from Pesach until the 33rd day of the Omer, which is known as Lag BaOmer. Another custom is to go from Rosh Chodesh Iyar until Shavuot. Each way you'll get 33 days. You're allowed to even switch in between them. I actually had to do this year based on a tshuva of Rav Moshe Feinstein because I had a wedding before Rosh Chodesh. So I've never had that before, a wedding before Rosh Chodesh, because that means that you're doing. It's the first time I ever had a wedding in between Yom HaAtzmaut and Yom HaShoah and Yom HaAtzmaut. It was a very unique scenario. Okay, we happen to be in the right place, at least in the Torah here, because our next discussion is going to be about the difference between Shabbat and Yom Tov. And there's no better place to start the discussion than verse 3 here. You can see it on the wall? With moderate success. You can see it on the wall. All right, let's see. I'll make it even bigger. Okay, there you go. So it says, Sheishet Yamim Tasem Melacha, 6 days you shall do your work. V'yom HaShvi Shabbat Shabbaton. And on the 7th day, it is a Shabbat. Mikra Kodesh, it is a holy convocation. Kol Melechat Avodah Lo Tasu. Kol Melacha Lo Tasu. Very important words there to understand Shabbat. Shabbat is all work. You cannot do any work on Shabbat. Chol Malacha. Why? Because Shabbat is a testimony to the fact that God created heaven and earth. Since God created heaven and earth, God's rest was complete. Therefore, your rest can be complete. So, are you allowed to transfer fire on Shabbat? No, you cannot try it. Not from an existing flame, not from a existing flame. No way can you transfer fire on Shabbat. Right? Can you cook on Shabbat? No, you cannot cook on Shabbat. Right? So that's the Shabbat piece. Okay. Yafeh. Let's go to Yom Tov. Okay, this is with respect to Pesach. With respect to Pesach, it says, Kol melechet avodah lo ta'asu. That you are not allowed to do what's called here Kol melechet avodah. In English, they say all manner of they trans here in the art school. I think they say it's all manner of servile work. Here they says you cannot work at your occupations. Okay, I don't know how they get that, right? Melechet avodah is work that you do. Maybe that's work that you do for some kind of the marketplace for productivity. But what kind of work is not marketplace work? Making an egg for someone on Yom Tov, cooking the fish for lunch on Yom Tov. That's not melechet avodah. That is not servile work. That is work which services the Yom Tov. The general theory behind working on Yom Tov is that the work that you're allowed to do on Yom Tov is meant to be servicing the Yom Tov, which is a very interesting thing. There's a whole prohibition against inviting a non-Jew to your home on Yom Tov. Why? Because you're allowed to cook for the holiday. But if somebody is not commanded in the holiday, can you cook for them on that holiday? That would be sort of, if you will, cooking for the marketplace, not cooking for the holiday. Now, there are all sorts of exemptions on this, which we use for people in certain scenarios. So let's say you have someone who's married to a non-Jew, but you want to invite them to your Seder because you're hoping maybe they'll come back to the fold, right? So you're allowed to invite them? Answer is yes, because you need to get the Jew in the door, right? Another way is sometimes, especially people in certain conversion situations, if they're single, it's hard to make that argument. So what people sometimes do is you're allowed to cook for your domestic help, people who sort of live in your house. What?
If they help do something,
you hire them as right. So then, yes, you can cook for them. So that's just it's an example. I saw what I say. I saw a very interesting.
Person to your house when you invited a Jewish person.
Well, wait, hold on. What was your case, Erwin?
Pastor.
Yeah.
You invite somebody, you bring a non-Jewish person. You can't invite the non-Jewish.
Oh, I see what you're saying. They just walk in. Well, okay, but like if you know a couple and she's not Jewish and you invite him, so you know what you're getting into. I think there's a reason for that. Oh, I think there was another interesting case. I'm digressing because this isn't really fundamentals anymore. What happens is the 8th day of Pesach? Can you invite an Israeli who's not observing the 8th day of Pesach to your home on Pesach? Probably not, because you can't really cook for them.
What if your job is
well, you should be taking off.
yeah.
I mean, my son had a job where he worked at one of these Pesach programs. He had a pop-up restaurant at one of these Pesach programs. So, I guess he has to rely on the purveyors of the program to make sure that everybody there is Jewish. That's an interesting question. But yeah, I think, again, there might also be the leniency that, if some Jew, they tend to select the people who are going to pay $10,000 a head for a Pesach program tend to be people who want, these kinds of things. But you never know. It's entirely possible nowadays. You got some wealthy family wants to bring everybody for Pesach. Their son, ran off with some, he's now married to someone who's not Jewish, and they want to have him there. So I think it's true, but then I guess that's all subsumed under the same leniency of, okay, you want to get the Jew in the door, so maybe we can make a leniency for that. Okay, but the nanny's not a problem because the nanny that's right. The girlfriend with the expensive manicure is not working. She's there. We're bringing her along so that maybe she comes to love Judaism. Although I'm not sure that's the place you go to love Judaism. Okay, so that's now there's another law which is the two. There are two aspects of Yom Tov, and we'll probably have to pick this up next time. Well, actually, we'll definitely pick it up next time because Mincha is starting in 2 minutes. That it is specifically what we call ochel nefesh, melechet ochel nefesh, the process of preparing food which is permitted on Yom Tov. Now, there's a whole second category of mitoch shehutra l'tzorach, hutra nami shelo l'tzorach, things that were permitted for Yom Tov necessity, such as kindling a fire, are also permitted for another reason. So let's just, for example, I'm allowed to kindle a fire, transfer fire to not kindle, but to transfer fire and start a new fire in order to cook food. And so in order for that to be, so since I'm allowed to do that, I'm also allowed to transfer fire, to light a fire in my fireplace and enjoy a fire in front during the warmth on Yom Tov. Okay, we're going to stop with that. Regrettably, well, it's not regrettable that mincha time is here, but I regret that we're out of time. We'll have to pick up more of this on our next episode. Thank you all for joining.